All right. Well, everyone, welcome tonight. We're really grateful that you took time out of your evenings to be with us. It looks like we have people represented from every time zone, Canada, across the board. So thank you, thank you. Um, we at Neuroanimation get to serve a lot of populations, stroke recovery, neurodegenerative disease, dementia, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's. I'm especially excited tonight to hear this presentation from Dr. Ahmad. Personally, my dad has Parkinson's, and I thought they'd be on this call. I'll have to text my mom and ask her why they're not on this call. He's actually starting his second neuroanimation program on Monday. But I've been walking this journey with my family for about 15 years, and I have firsthand experience understanding that sometimes, there feels like there's not a lot of treatment options out there, right? Or options for Parkinson's, or if you try something, you get discouraged because you don't get the results you want. And that's just been my personal experience with my family and with my dad. So I'm really excited tonight to hear from Dr. Ahmad, provide education and value to you all. And I think most importantly, when we do these webinars, it's that we provide you hope, hope that there are options out there to improve everyday quality of life, right? And we're going to hear the science behind neuroanimation and how it's really helping this population, people with Parkinson's. So to give you kind of a flow of the evening, we are going to hear from Marcia. Hopefully the technical difficulties have been solved. And she is just such a lovely woman. We've had the pleasure of working with her. She has gone through the neuroanimation program. So we're going to hear from her and her experience. And then we're going to turn things over to Dr. Omar Ahmad to share the science and how we're supporting those with Parkinson's disease. And then there will be plenty of time for Q&A as well. So if you can hold your questions to the end, that would be great. You can either put them in the chat and we will get to them, or feel free to just unmute yourself and ask your question. Also, just housekeeping, if you have to use the restroom or get off the call early, this will be recorded. And after this webinar this evening, we will be sending out the recording that you guys can reference later. You can share with your family, caretakers, your medical team, whomever, share it with anyone that you think would really benefit from this information. So with that, oh, and I didn't even introduce myself. My name is Michelle. I actually live in Montana, so I work remotely for Neuroanimation, director of sales, and I do see some familiar faces that I've been able to connect with. And if we haven't connected, I look forward to eventually doing so in the future. So with that, I am going to turn things over to Sean Ireland, who is going to introduce Marcia Taylor.
Thank you, Michelle. Appreciate it. This is going to be, I'm sure, for many of you, a very enlightening, inspiring, and educational webinar. And we're going to discuss how neuroanimation has been teaming with so many different types of brain recovery issues. And we are seeing with Parkinson's and the gains being made. It's life altering and it's so inspiring. So we're so excited to be able to talk to you about that. You'll love what Dr. Ahmad has to say. And part of what we love too is getting to know clients. And I get the privilege of introducing you today to Marcia. And Marcia came to neuroanimation probably like many, skeptical a little bit, exasperated from her journey. And when she got there, I met her on day one, and she was not sure what she was walking into, to be honest, And she just said, I feel like this is something I need to try. And I can tell you by day 15, I said, Marcia, show me your hands, because she had substantial tremors when she started. And she held her hands straight out and they didn't move, and she smiled and we celebrated. And it really was just a beautiful moment. Now, her whole goal was to be able to have her handwriting. She does beautiful thank you notes. And I can tell you that she had some remarkable results. And that wasn't the only gain. There were many more that she's going to share with you too. So not only did we have a great experience and a great celebration with Marcia, We have a new friend, as we often do. That's part of also what we love about neuroanimation because our clients become our friends, and then we are always there throughout their journey. So hopefully, Marcia, I gave you the thumbs up, lady. This is on you now. You've got a heck of a story to tell. So why don't you share with everybody, Marcia, what you've been doing and how neuroanimation has been there along the way? Okay, it's all you. Go ahead.
Thank you. And I apologize for the problem that we're having with the voice. And if you want to see a person who has Parkinson's who is stressed, you're looking at her right now. So I'll go on.
You'll do
Um,
great.
I was diagnosed with Parkinson's in 2014, but I suspect that I had it before then. My PCP wouldn't listen to me when I told her that my finger was shaking. And so I just went on with my life until I thought something is wrong. I need to go to her and tell her to do something. So that's what I did. And I suspect I had it longer than or before 2014. So in the beginning, it was just some tremors. It wasn't anything big. And I think one of the things that really helped me was that I worked out a lot. I went to TRX. I had a trainer one day. I walked 3 to 5 miles on weekends. And I also went to Rock Steady Boxing 2 days a week. And I remember my neurologist that I was seeing, who was at the Mayo Clinic, he said to me, "You were really hard to diagnose," but he said, "Whatever you're doing, keep on doing it." Well, as we all know, COVID comes and life changes. And it's probably during the last 5 years where I noticed a change in me. And I just thought I have to do something at this point, and I really wasn't sure what it was. And I had just, well, I moved to Ohio 5 years ago, so that's stress of moving combined with the more of the symptoms that I had of Parkinson's was kind of hard on me. I was depressed for a long time, and I had to get my attitude back where it was when I first discovered that I had this. And attitude is everything. And I've tried to stay positive throughout it, the past 12 years. So I looked into some things. One was a stem cell study that was going on and the deep brain stimulation. And I really thought about it and I prayed about it. And I said, nope, I can't do those two things. There has to be something else out there. Well, here comes the good part. I was flying to Bozeman, Montana, and I was on the plane, and I had asked the day before if I could upgrade, because I thought the poor person who sits next to me when my legs start jumping around, I'm going to be hitting him or the person in front of me. So I was able to move up, and this gentleman came and sat down beside me. And I can't remember if I said something to him or he said something to me, but he told me he was a neuroscientist. And I thought, oh, this ought to be good. So anyway, we talked and talked about my symptoms, and he told me about neuroanimation. And, I was intrigued, but at the same time, I thought, how can this work? And so we talked for quite a while. I probably talked too much. And he gave me his card and he told me to call Michelle. Well, I was in Bozeman for a week. I came home and I started looking up research on it, looking up the company. And I thought, okay, I have to do something, because I was to the point where I wasn't happy with the things I couldn't do. I like to sew. I have doll houses. I knit. And it was starting to affect that. And I'm a fighter, and I'm not going to let Parkinson's, win over me. So anyway, I called and I talked to Michelle, and there were a lot of phone calls back and forth. I had a lot of questions. And so I thought, I'm going to do this. And my cousin and I went to the open house, which was very informative. And, I remember Tara being there and Preston and explaining what went on when you enrolled in these classes or workshops. So I did enroll, and the first day I went, I was a nervous wreck, more so than now. But I had a great coach, Caden, and we started with things, and within 3 days, I was starting to notice little things. And so one of the negative things was some of my friends and family weren't very supportive. And I will say that everyone there was supportive, not just Caden, but everyone. And when you walked into that consolidation room, which I'm sure someone will explain what that is, you just felt I don't know, I'm going to say love in there and the caring. I mean, it was unreal to me. It was just totally unreal. So anyway, one day I was in the animation room, and I noticed that I looked down at my hand and it wasn't shaking. And when I take my pills, when I took them before, well, I still take them, but when I first, I guess up until um, a week after, or a few days after I was there, um, I would take 2 pills and then take 2 more. And the first hour was I would shake, and I had the second and third hour free. The fourth hour I would shake, so I actually got 2 hours out of that. Well, my hand was not shaking, and Caden looked at me and he said, I noticed that before. And so the other thing was my handwriting was horrible. I could not read my own handwriting. And I came home one day and I was just writing things on a list, which I wrote anyway. And I thought, I can actually read my handwriting. So I took my little book I had, and I went in like a little kid, going home to his mother and telling, Mommy, look what I did. But I was just thrilled. I can't say enough. Little things are still happening. One of my friends told me, you're walking different now. You're walking much better. The brain fog, that was a concern of mine. And I still have a long way to go on that, but I can notice the difference there. So I'm looking forward to going back in a couple of months and picking up where I left off.
That's amazing,
Sean,
Marcia.
is there anything you want to add that I missed?
No, I think what has always inspired me about you, Marcia, is your attitude and your motivation. I
Yeah,
think that is also truly the sign, and that's the recipe for a great warrior. And you are, and you don't give up. And I'm sure, it was nerve-wracking in the beginning, but I am so happy with your lift in attitude, your joy that's in your life and the hopefulness, so we're here for the journey, and I'm just so happy for you and where you're at in life.
right. And that's important to have that. And I see people who, I've seen that at Rock Steady Boxing where they just go there and go through the motions, but the good attitude and the faith and just believing and is everything. It's everything. And I refuse to let Parkinson's bring me down without a fight. As I said, I will fight. So
That's
thank you for
great.
letting me share my story.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Marcia, very much. I'm glad we heard you loud and clear. I'm glad we worked out those technical difficulties, and I'm sure you inspired a lot of people on this call. So thank you for taking the time to share. Okay, so with that, I'm going to turn things over to Dr. Omar Ahmad, the founder of Neuroanimation, to share more about the science behind neuroanimation and how Marcia is seeing the results that she is. So the floor is yours.
Great, thank you. Can everyone see the slide?
We can, yes.
Okay, great. So, and I just wanted to say thank you to Marcia too. I mean, it's so wonderful to hear her, but she inspires us just as much and informs us and guides us about that warrior spirit, which is such an important part of what we do and why we put our life's best work into healing and into making these things. So I'm going to start. This is a little bit more of a sciencey presentation that I normally do. And I hope, and I think most of the people coming here have some understanding. I think when this disease affects you, people do read a lot about it and they become informed about it. And this is a very informative presentation. It's going to teach you about some of the most exciting and the newest things in Parkinson's and what we're doing in particular. The most important thing for this presentation related to neuroanimation is the incredible results that we're seeing with our clients. And this is something that, it doesn't really occur in therapies and in research where you have things as stark as the results that we're seeing. And this is new, and I'll explain why. So first, the classic definition of Parkinson's is neuron loss in a place of the brain called the basal ganglia. And this is a small image of the basal ganglia. And it's a dopaminergic neuron loss in the substantia nigra. That's actually what Parkinson's has historically been categorized, and which leads to motor symptoms, tremor, rigidity, bradykinesia. But this is actually a very old model. The standard historical understanding is that Parkinson's is a basal ganglia disease. And because of that, all of the research has really poured into it as that. And we don't really have much to show for it in the research community to actually treat the degeneration there. But the reality of Parkinson's is that, even though there's little to no progress in treatment, other than some symptomatic relief with certain drugs, but they're very, very limited in their effectiveness. It's a progressive disease that keeps declining, motor and cognitively. And patients are often told there's very little we can do. And again, this is largely because the focus has been completely on this one area of the brain, where treatments are targeting dopamine and basal ganglia circuitry. And we can't reverse that degeneration. It just doesn't happen at a cellular level. So the disease will progress anyway. Most of the treatments don't really do things other than some masking of the symptoms. So we're targeting a degenerating node that we can't really strengthen. But this is where it gets really interesting, is that Parkinson's is not just a basal ganglia disease. And this is the new model and the new science. Parkinson's is actually a network neurodegenerative disease that involves many systems of the brain. The cortex, the limbic system, the brainstem, and a really important part of the brain called the hippocampus. And the evidence that it's a broader network disease is that we see impairments in Parkinson's patients over time that aren't related to the basal ganglia. Okay, so we see cognitive impairments, memory deficits, dual tasking breakdowns. And really important is motor learning becomes a problem in Parkinson's patients. And again, this is not explained by it's not explained by the basal ganglia. It's explained by degenerations in other parts of the brain. The hippocampus is super important for brain health. And this is the real important point of this talk. And what I want you to take away is the relationship between the hippocampus and Parkinson's and what we're doing at neuroanimation to strengthen that. And so, but first, there's a little bit of a revolution in science happening right now where we've discovered something kind of miraculous about the hippocampus. And we call it the hippocampus revolution. If you actually go online and you Google search hippocampus and superagers, you're going to find a bunch of articles, and it's reflecting this sort of revolution of our understanding. And for decades, neuroscience assumed that adults can't generate new neurons. And that assumption is collapsing. And that collapse is one of the most exciting things to happen in neuroscience in the last 100 years. And it's related to the hippocampus. So the major scientific breakthrough is that adult brains have a little neuron factory. They grow new neurons. They're produced in the hippocampus, and they are key to brain health. So the hippocampus in its little neuron factory, it constantly creates them, and they connect directly to the memory areas of the hippocampus and form long circuits that go throughout its entire structure. But these 3 points you should take away from this talk of how central this part of the brain is and why it's so key to brain health. So if you did Google this, you'll see all these articles that recently came out. Brains of superagers are strong producers of new neurons. Superagers' secret ingredient may be the growth of new brain cells. You know, the title for this is, it's not just growing new neurons for superagers, but also Alzheimer's and dementia and other things. We see, the people who are able to stave off that disease, they have more new neurons in their brains. So there's a place in the hippocampus, I'm going to get a little bit more detailed here, that is actually responsible for producing these new neurons. It's neuron factory, and it's called the dentate gyrus. And it's the key to brain health, okay? Now, when it's working right, you're constantly creating new neurons. They're connecting to your memory parts of the brain, and they're creating these long neural pathways that go to all the other areas of the brain. They're also responsible for motor learning, for motor planning, for executive functioning. So it's very, very critical that this neuron factory stays healthy. When it's not healthy, okay, we see diseases. And all of these diseases can be shown by atrophy of the hippocampus, okay? Traumatic brain injury, dementia, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, chronic stroke, ADHD. If you look at the hippocampal size of all of these, in all of these conditions, you'll see it's actually smaller. And there's a very special case for also Parkinson's. So Parkinson's patients develop symptoms that are only explained by hippocampal atrophy. It's executive dysfunction, memory impairment, visual spatial deficits, motor learning deficits. And again, these are not basal ganglia functions, they're hippocampal functions. So Parkinson's is also a disorder of the hippocampus, not just the basal ganglia. And I went through all of that science. I know it's a little bit complex, but it's just basically, convey that there's these different areas of the brain and these different networks that all have to work together. Parkinson's disease is actually a disease of all of them. But you can sort of see there's latent hope in what I was explaining in the presentation, is that we can actually strengthen the hippocampus. Okay, and the hippocampus has this ability to produce new neurons. So in some people where you have lots of neuronal growth, you have very strong brain health and you get superagers. And again, when you don't have that neuron factory activated or it's not working right, and you're not producing new neurons, you get brain diseases and dysfunctions. But there's 2 pieces to this puzzle. One, which I just went over, is that you need new neurons. They increase your hippocampus volume and it leads to brain health. But how do you do that? How do you stimulate that? So that's where what we did at neuroanimation is truly revolutionary. It's the other piece of the puzzle. We were actually able to stimulate the dentate gyrus. We were able to stimulate the neuron factory to create those new neurons. So we also sort of made history with neuroanimation. So the first piece of the puzzle was that, okay, adult brains can produce new neurons, but we also showed how to stimulate it to produce it. And that's with a study we did with the Department of Defense. It was a $3 million study. And what we showed is that after neuroanimation, we grew the hippocampus in a very significant way. We grew that part that's connected to the neuron factory, so the memory section, and then your executive functioning, another part of it called the subiculum, which is responsible for a lot of other things. And the amount that we actually increased it in the volume was enormous. It was about 5 to 10% and 4 to 6% in 2 different subregions. Now, just to give you an example, so as you get older, your hippocampus declines, okay? And remember, it's the decline is implicated in all of these diseases. So after the age of 55, it declines about 1 to 2% a year. Now, if you do vigorous exercise, you can stave off that decline and actually increase the volume about 1 to 2%. But what we did is we increased it 5 to 10%. So it's by a far greater amount. And that's really what you should take away, is that there's this comparison between doing exercise, which is still important, but there's something about exercise that we've been able to extract and amplify in neuroanimation. And it's not by the intensity. It's not really an intense workout. It's more of a demanding cognitive and motor workout. So finally, this is one way to look at it, that you have neuroanimation. It activates the hippocampus. It creates new neurons. The volume of the hippocampus increases, and it leads to brain health. How it does it is this neuron factory also has a secondary function. It's responsible for motor learning. So it's kind of separate. So, okay, it's producing new neurons, which is really important for all of the brain, but also you can activate it by motor learning. And that's really what the essence of neuroanimation is. You're put into this theater and we track you with 12 cameras, and you're controlling these animals in a very complex 3D motor planning with continuous sensory feedback and goal-directed behavior. And when you do this, it stimulates that part of the brain. It happens to be the dentate gyrus, which leads to neuronal growth, and it also leads to new movements and cognitive gains. And we see this across all of our clients in enormous ways. So once again, this part is very, very important to understand, that hippocampal growth in exercise is about 1 to 2%, but in neuroanimation, the total is about 4 to 10%. This comparison is very critical because it's going to help you understand why neuroanimation should be incorporated into exercise programs. So Marcia did exactly what people who are diagnosed with Parkinson's need to do. They need to do exercise physiology programs. Exercise is actually a disease-modifying treatment for Parkinson's. And we think that's because it has this ability to strengthen the hippocampus, and it has other effects. But the question is, okay, well, what happens when you combine neuroanimation, which hones in on that hippocampal growth, with exercise? And this is what we see with our clients. So why does exercise and neuroanimation work? So they're increasing, again, these proteins in the brain, which are very healthy, plasticity and neurogenesis. And so let's look at what happens when you combine neuroanimation and exercise, which is what we did in the scientific study. We compared the first generation of neuroanimation to one of the best exercise physiology programs on the planet. So the result was pretty striking. This was presented in 2024. The study was carried out at CNS which is north of Lisbon. So neuroanimation performed as well as basically the best physiotherapy approach in the world, but in key areas, it outperformed it. Okay, and these are the measurements where cognition and movement were combined, which are very, very important. So again, physiotherapy is widely recommended, and it absolutely should be, but neuroanimation, when combined with it, can do even better. And this is why we're advocating for it and the results. And what we're seeing go, far beyond anything we've seen even in this study. So one thing I want to clarify is this study was done on the first generation of neuroanimation when I was faculty at Johns Hopkins. Right now, we're at the third generation of the technology. We actually pulled that technology out of the university and evolved it far beyond. And what we're seeing with Marcia and other Parkinson's clients go far beyond this original study that we did, which still showed its effectiveness. This was a client of ours. His name was Mohammed. He was in his 80s. He came in shuffling gait, massive cognitive problems. So he came in mumbling. He spoke 2 languages, but barely spoke Arabic. That was his first language. By the end of the 3 weeks, he was speaking fluently again in English and Arabic. he had 1,000% increase in his executive capacity and short-term memory. So this was so stark from the family that he came in, mumbling, barely able to hold conversation, to talking lucidly by the end. Also, we have videos of his gait, which resolved tremendously. So he was shuffling his feet on the first day he came. He was walking with a very good stride by the end. Similar types of improvements we see across our Parkinson's clients. This is actually a picture of Marcia's handwriting before and after. So the tremor reduction leads to obviously the stability, but it is an enormous improvement, which occurred just over 3 weeks. So to conclude, in our view, neuroanimation and exercise is a candidate for first-line disease-modifying treatment. It's exciting at our center that we see so many Parkinson's clients do so well. We really hit it out of the ballpark with a lot of them, and I think it's because we're targeting an area of the brain which is actually central to Parkinson's, and it has a lot of implications in its overall health for different parts of the symptom that go beyond the basal ganglia. So with that, I think I will stop and open the floor for questions.
And if anyone has questions, you can unmute yourself or you can throw questions in the chat, whatever you feel most comfortable doing. Susan, yeah, go ahead. I see your hand raised, so you can ask your question.
Thank you, Michelle. I'm just curious how they decided on a 3-week program for the neuroanimation program. And also why it's the room with all the cameras instead of a VR headset.
Sure. So the reason why we chose the 3-week protocol. So first of all, we do the 3-week protocol because that's what we did in our clinical studies. So we wanted to space it out. We did a 12-week program and we did a 3-week program where we tried to best guess the hours of efficacy that we thought would be required. And it's somewhat of an educated guess. We looked at a lot of the literature, but right now we're really following just best practice that was the evidence that showed efficacy. So we sort of mirror what we did in our early clinical studies. But having that said, we also sometimes we do customized programs. Sometimes we see great effect in them. Generally, we're learning that there's the neuroanimation activity, which stimulates the brain, which stimulates new neurons. But then we do consolidation activities where we work on the quality of the type of activity the client wants to improve. And that relationship seems to be very effective. The question about the VR, the camera system is better because we can have, it's a little bit complicated, but it allows us to do a true proprioceptive workout with the movement. So in virtual reality, you can see your hand, and also there's a different relationship between how you move and the creature. So we use it more of as a supplement between the boot camps. There still looks to be like efficacy there, but the stronger efficacy will be in the camera-based system, where there's an extra step of mental processing to move and then move the animals in the game. Thank you. Great question.
Thank you. That was a very helpful answer.
What?
There's another question in the chat asking about the frequency for repeat programs or treatments. What is indicated for Parkinson's, the cadence of repeat programs?
We're generally recommending people come back after 3 to 6 months for the therapy. Both 2 reasons. One, we're adding other additional protocols and things in the software. When people get good at it, we want to continue the difficulty, and looking at their continued games. One good thing is we generally don't see a decline with the vast majority of our patients after the first what we boot camp or 12-week session. They usually have a break, they come back, we see the gains usually retained, and then they keep building, which is really exciting. That's for stroke, and the others, even, we're gonna, so for some of the neurodegenerative, so Parkinson's, I've kept up to date with some of our clients. They're continuing to thrive and do well, and it also motivates them to do other things once they go through the first boot camp.
Looks like there's a hand raised. Rajesh, you can unmute you.
Yeah. Hi, Dr. Ahmad. So, any information on Alzheimer's dementia patients? A lot of discussion was on Parkinson's.
Yeah,
So, can you highlight some of that? Thank you.
yeah, sure. So the in Alzheimer's, so first of all, one of our main clinical studies was done in TBI patients who had a propensity to develop Alzheimer's and dementia. That was the DoD study that actually showed the brain growth. So from our real world evidence, we have seen a lot of really interesting things. In some of the early onset, we see very strong resolution. We have a couple of clients in there right now, and we're going to accumulate this data and publish it as well. We're seeing, very, very strong kind of reversals in certain symptoms. We have seen in one case, there was very deep into Alzheimer's. There was about a 2 month or a 1 month, almost like a reversal, but it didn't. That kept degenerating. We wanted to get him back in the program at a certain time, but that was a little bit. We weren't too excited about taking someone that far into the disease. We have seen very strong results though in the early diagnosis of Alzheimer's and dementia and seeing effects there.
Omar, can you speak to gait improvement in freezing in Parkinson's?
Yeah, so we have across the board, we see very strong gait improvements in our Parkinson's clients. Balance, gait, we do a whole battery of tests. So timed up and go dual tasking tests, and we see strong improvements across that. We have one client where we saw a massive reduction in gait freezing. So that was really, really solid.
A couple other questions. Do clients that have DBS continue with DBS along with neuroanimation?
Yeah, we don't really, they're not interfering with each other. So, if you have DBS, that's fine. It's not really something that, again, we're targeting the hippocampus. So it's also kind of orthogonal to it.
With neuron growth, are some individuals having the need for less medication?
Yeah, so we have, some of our clients report that. Marcia reported that earlier, right? She didn't have to take so many of the pills that controlled the tremor. So that definitely is the case. We see that across our clients. We don't advocate for that. We're not there to give medical advice on people's drug intake. That's something they have to talk to with their doctor. But a lot of them do go back and get off certain drugs that they feel are no longer necessary. We have had that.
There's a question in the chat. Meg, I might need to get some clarification from you. It says if a patient has a hippocampal, there might be a spell near 1. I don't know if that's what you meant, but is very physically active. What improvement have you seen in this volume increase with a 12-week round of the program? Meg, if you want to clarify that first part, or you can jump on and ask your question too. We'll come back to that. Maybe, hippocampal volume near 1. Oh, volume near 1, like the literal 1, but is very physically active. What improvement have you seen in this volume increase of the 12-week round of the program?
So if a patient has I still don't understand the question, a volume near
1. I'm not sure if I understand the question either.
So, if you're asking if the hippocampal volume is normal or if it's abnormal.
We'll come back to that quick. I'll
Okay, yeah.
I'll message her on the side. Interested to know how accessible this therapy is. Do many clients have to travel for it? And there was also another question about location. So right now we currently have 2 locations. One right outside of Columbus, Ohio, and New Albany. It's about 20 minutes outside of Columbus. And we just recently opened another location in Lexington, Kentucky. So those are the two locations, and many of our clients do travel for the program, and we have a list of a local hotel that has a shuttle service to and from the center. We have a list of Airbnbs as well, and we can help with the logistics and supporting people to set up logistics. And majority of our clients are actually coming from out of state. But Joel, I'd be happy to talk about your specific situation and help you with that. Any non-motor system changes noted?
Yeah, so there's a whole spectrum of changes that we see after neuroanimation, ranging from cognitive to motor. So we also do a whole battery of tests that, cognitive tests, memory, executive functioning, processing speed. We do pure physical tests, so your grip strength, which is actually related to your brain more than it is the physical strength. Um, timed up and go while you're mentally processing things. So a range of tests and a range of improvements we see across physical, cognitive, and then in between, where it's cognitive and physical. So they're very, very strong. We see an enormous effect on motivation and mood. And this is because of the science. So the hippocampus is responsible for emotional regulation as well. So it controls what's called the hypothalamus axis. So when people are overwhelmed or they're anxious or they have a very high cortisol response, stress response, it's really the hippocampus that is downturning that stress response. So they become much more resilient. So it's really interesting to see that. You just see people more motivated and in much better moods. It has a very strong antidepressive effect to it. Again, it all stems from sort of where the targeted action is.
There's a question, what exactly is done at the program? So if you just kind of want to walk through the
Yeah,
general.
so the a client will go into our studios. They're very sophisticated. It's a large projection screen in front of them. There's 12 cameras that surround them. We track hundreds of joints on their body, and we map those joints as they move into what we call virtual animals. And what they're doing is motor learning. So it's a task that they don't know how to do. It's very complicated. They have to move in 3 dimensions. They have to motor plan. The way I describe it is, imagine learning a new motor task for an entire hour. So you never really master it. You're just constantly in that motor learning phase. So motor learning involves 3D position planning. It involves spatial awareness of where your body is. It involves a new task that you don't know how to do, that you have to infer dynamics. You have to infer the physics of what you're kind of interacting with or manipulating. And all of that is contained in this theater experience. So you can't really exercise the brain with movement outside of what we do at neuroanimation. Like if you're learning a new sport, you'll have some motor learning occur for a small period of time, but it's not extended and then amplified in such a unique way. And that's really what occurs in that theater system. And again, what it's targeting is the hippocampus. So these are all the things that this area of the brain is stimulated by. And when it's stimulated by it, it ends up producing new neurons for itself, but also to create new connections throughout the brain. And that's where we get this very, very strong neuroplasticity.
Omar, can you speak to, because I think people on this call are probably at various stages with Parkinson's, some early onset, some further along. And maybe you address this, but perhaps you can talk about it again, how neuroanimation and strengthening the hippocampus has the potential of slowing the progression of not only can neuroanimation improve day to day, but how it's actually, staving off that progression of disease.
Sure. So anything that's hippocampal in Parkinson's. So again, Parkinson's is not just the basal ganglia declining over time. It's actually much more of the brain network, and there's lots of science which shows that. I can provide references to people if they want to see. So, and another way to look at this is, as we get older, we're declining. We're all degenerating, our brains, right? After 50, you're losing volume and your hippocampus is declining 1 to 2%. This is also, a lot of people theorize this is where Alzheimer's and dementia actually come from. They come from this neurovascular atrophy of the hippocampus. So we're directly reversing that. So you're countering that volume loss. You're increasing the healthy cells, you're stimulating new cells to grow. So it's just a natural overall reversal of that degeneration. That's how it slows progression for all of the parts of Parkinson's that would be related to hippocampal decline. So it's not just motor execution, right? There's motor learning. So the dual tasking, the cognitive fog, all of that stuff will be reversed. It's strengthening new motor pathways. It's also why we have an effect in stroke. And this is why I think we see such improvements in gait and also in handwriting and tremor. So it's clearly reversing some part of the deficit in the brain, and this is in turn relieving a lot of the symptoms and people have improvement. Now, some of this is unknown, right? We have effects in the clinic that we are sort of shocked by, right? So people with visual problems sometimes have total resolutions. We've had clients who, after stroke, had poor vision, and they had to change their prescription after the neuroanimation because their vision cleared up. So I've had clients who are like, "Hey, I can't wear my glasses anymore because it's blurry. I had to take them off." And they go and they're, optometrists, and they see the prescription changes. So there's some mystery behind, how the effect happens, but it is definitely related to the centrality of motor learning and hippocampal strengthening and strengthening those networks, which happen to connect to most of the networks in the brain.
Perfect. Thank you. We kind of touched on this, but maybe you can just provide some clarification. How often does one have to return for therapy? Is it one and done, or do you have to come back periodically forever?
We for Parkinson's, I think it's going to be integrated into your life just like exercises. It's very easy to incorporate it into your life. It's a lot of fun. It's something that we're going to build centers around the world where this is something I want everyone to be able to walk to have access. Just like you go to a gym, you go to a neuroanimation center and you have a program that's, once or twice a week. I imagine doing 2 12-week programs a year is kind of, my best guess towards maintaining optimal health and slowing the progression.
Have studies been done on younger people who have Parkinson's in their family history for potential preventative treatment? And is there a benefit to the training treatment outside of treating disease or catastrophic injury from TBI and stroke? So two-part question. First, preventative, and then the second part.
We haven't done preventative studies, but all the indications of our evidence show that it'll have an effect in prevention as well. The TBI study, this was for prevention of Alzheimer's and dementia. So we showed that growth, which is occurring in normal, healthy people. We've had some clients who are intact cognitively, who come out of the program feeling better than when they started, right? So it's sort of like turning people into super performers. Just increase motivation, increase executive functioning. These things kind of happen across the board, no matter where you start. So if you're someone who's not looking for disease treatment or sort of therapy, you can also look at it as something for hyper performance. Or does that answer the question? So.
And then someone just had a question, how do you enroll? After this webinar, I will be sending out an email, and in the email, there'll be a link to schedule a consultation. And a consultation just means we have a one-on-one conversation, talk through your goals, look at, the logistics of the program, getting you to one of the locations. We can discuss obviously costs and all of that. So there'll be a link to schedule a call with me. You can also just email or call directly as well. And all of the contact information will be in the email after the webinar. So if you registered and you're listening to this webinar, you will get an email from me afterwards. Let's see here. And there's a lot of questions about cost. So again, you can shoot me an email. I can provide all the cost for the program that'd be most appropriate for you. That is the extent of the questions in the chat. If anyone else had any questions they wanted to ask live, we have about 5 minutes. Otherwise, we can end early as well. Any other questions? Okay. All right, perfect. Well, thanks again, everyone, for your time. Marcia, thank you so much for sharing your inspiring story. As I mentioned, the recording, as soon as I have it uploaded, I will be sending out the link. Please share with any groups you're a part of, friends, family, anyone who you think could benefit. And in that email, again, there'll be a link to schedule. You can contact me directly as well. So thank you, Dr. Ahmad, for sharing tonight. And I wish you all well and have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.